as you know, a couple of years ago, we did write this book called Tripping Points. And it was really a collage and a consensus of various case studies over almost 20, 30 years, working with a variety of businesses. But before we tell you more about what we do and why we do it, I'd like to get a little bit feeling as to share with me some more about you. Raise of hand in terms of business owners in the room. Business owners. Okay, how about family business owners that have family members working in their business? Okay. How many of you are passionate about perpetuating your businesses? Okay. That's what we're all about. Okay? That's what we're all about. And let's start with a little bit of background information. I'm a product of fourth generation family business. After working and growing up in our family business, I decided to go into the public accounting profession, where I became a partner with a large international consulting firm, predominantly doing merger and acquisition work. But after years of doing that and kind of helping businesses exit and business owners liquidate their investments, I decided, you know what, there's more to life. I mean, how about the sustainability opportunities? I mean, you've heard some of these numbers, right? You've heard of some of the failure rates with regards to only 30% of businesses, not just family businesses. And please, our comments today will be all about private enterprises, and to the extent you want to have the passion to perpetuate your organization or increase the value, these principles and concepts all apply. But again, historically, only a third of businesses make it to the second generation. That means only a third of businesses survive 20 years. Only 10% make them to the third generation, and a measly 4% make them to the fourth generation. Amazing numbers, huh? So I always ask myself, well, if a business owner had the passion to perpetuate their business, how can we help them overcome these odds? And it was interesting to note is that 79% of business owners, 79% of the people in this room would like the opportunity to perpetuate their businesses. 79%. 70% of the next generation, family members working in the business, or your management team would love the opportunity to retain control. So we asked ourselves 20 years ago, if the passion is so high to want to perpetuate your organization, why is the mortality rate so high? And we started asking ourselves the question, why is the failure rate so high? In essence, what are the tripping points? And if we were to put together a plan, if we had the passion to perpetuate our organization, what would that plan look like, and what are the issues that we need to address? That's what Tripping Points is all about. On your table is a bookmark that basically delineates the 7 critical issues. And Hal's going to be talking about each one of those soon. But that's what Tripping Points is all about. And in essence, these are the 7 critical issues that we need to address if we want to perpetuate our organizations. So we've been doing this kind of work for 20 some odd years. But why are we here today? Why are we here today? There's a window of opportunity. I'm sure a lot of you are aware of the fact of the 2010 tax changes. In essence, at the end of 2010, out of the blue, we got revisions to our estate tax law. And they increased the lifetime exemptions. Before it was only $1 million per individual, $2 million per couple. All of a sudden, they increased it to $10 million. And they reduced the rates. Great opportunity to do ownership transfer work to perpetuate your business and save millions and millions and millions of dollars of taxes, okay? So we're here today to tell you that this window is about to close. This window is coming to an end, that already in the proposed tax laws, and there's an article on your table that I suggest that you take with you that kind of identifies and isolates some of these issues. But already on the table, we have proposed tax changes. Who doesn't think tax rates are going up? And who do you think is going to pay the blunt? Middle America, right? We're going to bear this cost. Higher estate taxes. So we're talking about taking the $10 million away and going back down to 2, okay? And we're talking about increasing the tax rates back to 55%. And they can do this without any changes. The 2010 tax changes will expire. So by doing nothing, the window closes, okay? Second thing, well, reduction of lifetime exclusion, that's the 10 million. Higher tax rates, S-corps and LLCs. I would imagine that most people in this room, from a business organization perspective, you're an S-corp or you're an LLC, not necessarily a C corporation. We know that as S-corps and LLCs, as owners of those businesses, we get taxed at a personal tax rate, right? So we know when all of a sudden we see all the tax rates going up, especially for the wealthy, even though it's business-related income, we're going to be taxed at the highest rates. It's just what's happening. However, I've always indicated that tax advantages for Wall Street will continue to exist. They're talking about lowering C corp rates. They're also talking about increasing dividends. So if I'm a CEO of a public company, I kind of like that. That means I get to pay lower taxes and I get to keep all your cash. Pretty good deal, right? But for us in the middle, we got challenges. So opportunities, reasons why. We're going to talk about the reasons why this happens. In general terms, what causes these failures? So you ask yourself, well, why, if the passion's so high, why is the failure rate so high? And in essence, being a finance guy, I always thought it was because of poor planning. Somebody just didn't put together their estate plan, or there was an inefficient ownership transfer. That's what I thought. That's not the truth. Then we thought it was maybe because the next generation isn't as capable as the first generation, right? You've all heard the shirtless to shirtless in 3 generations. We asked ourselves that question. Maybe the next generation just doesn't have the talent, or the times have changed. But we're here to tell you that the reasons why businesses are not successful and perpetuating from generation to generation, the majority of the reasons are because of relationships. It's all about how we get along. And if I can, I'll share my family story with you. As I mentioned, I'm a product of 4th generation family business. We had to sell our family business about 25 years ago. It was a business that started in the 1800s, been around over 100 years. And everything was fine until my grandparents passed away. And all of a sudden, my mom and her sister became the shareholders of this business. Never involved in the family business. They didn't have a clue. Their husbands were working in the business. My dad was the president and so forth. But after the grandparents passed away, mom and aunt started fighting, right?
What was your product or service, Kurt?
It was a box spring manufacturing company and located in Watts, okay? Survived the Watts riots, but did not survive family turmoil. So anyway, the family decided after all the cost of disharmony, we're going to talk about the cost of disharmony, that we needed to sell the family business. And that was the good news. We sold it to a large Fortune 500 company. My younger brother is now the CEO of this business. The sad part, and why I do what I do, is because my mother passed away at age 54 from breast cancer. And the doctors said that those tumors started when the dispute started with her sister. That's the cost of disharmony. That's why we spend so much time working on relationships. Hal will share with you in a minute, relationships are the conduit of business. And we put in governance structures, relationship structures to improve relationships in the family business or in any of your organizations. Because you know, if you're all rowing together, if everybody's aligned, if you share common values, you have a common vision, you trust each other and you're communicating, you're going to get the job done. But if we're not communicating, if we don't trust each other, disharmony sets in. We typically think of disharmony in terms of the cost of hiring lawyers to resolve a dispute, right? But you know the cost of disharmony is even higher. So we talk a lot about how do we maintain harmony in our businesses. And there's a formula, there's a methodology that's not too different than strategic planning in terms of how do you do that. And we sign up, we get engaged by our clients to maintain or improve family harmony and to get the next generation ready to become responsible shareholders. So that's what we're doing. But we approach it from a business perspective. We're all about the business. We bring the family together to keep our capital close to our business. If our family and our shareholders are not close to the business, the cost of disharmony or the cost of losing a shareholder is higher than the cost of losing your most significant customer. So we talk a lot about the relationship issues. Yes, as you can tell in this article, there's 3 key elements of succession planning. It's the ownership transfer piece, which is what we need to do now between now and the end of the year to take advantage of these tax opportunities. Second one is governance, because all of a sudden, if we're moving from 1 shareholder to 3 or 4 shareholders, how we make decisions are extremely important. Third key element is management succession planning. So when we talk about succession planning and the work that you need to do between now and the end of the year, yes, we'll talk about ownership and the transfer of stock, but yes, we need to be very careful about governance issues because we do not want to give a child who's not prepared to make those decisions a new Ferrari, okay? It'll be catastrophic. So we put in systems to help improve relationships and to maintain harmony. Hal, what have I missed here?
Not much.
Okay, we're going to talk about now what is business transition planning. And what you're going to see is that there's a difference between business transition planning and business succession planning, okay? Typically, when we think of business succession planning, again, we're talking about ownership, governance, and management succession. We talk about business transition planning, it's a lot broader. Because if our decision is to perpetuate our businesses, we got to make sure we understand what that means and whether our business is ready or not. So it means a lot of working in the business in order to transition it to the next generation. You know, we're here today to tell you we need to do business transition, business succession planning now because the costs are going up. But this is typically when it happens, okay? The ideal time to do this work is when we've got 3 or 5 years to plan for it. But I will tell you most of the time is when we are in a difficult financial condition or poor physical health of a shareholder or a family member. We're scrambling. Or right now, we have to be very careful that the tax tail is not wagging the dog. If we decide to take advantage of the tax changes here before the end of this year, we got to make sure our governance structure is in place and we have defined our management succession plan. Who's going to run the business? Okay? Questions before we get into some of the critical issues? Okay. That's enough for now. Hal.
I want to tell you first a little bit about how Kurt and I got together and started doing what we do. 25 years ago, I was running a business in Hawaii. Yep, I had to do it. And Kurt was with the international accounting firm, and he was the partner in charge of the audits and so on for my company. And we started meeting for lunch once a month, and that was the living management letter that accounting firms provide to their clients. And we hit it off and became really good friends and had some common interests about business. Well, I got recruited out of that and went to England for 4 years and ran an international company over there that gave me the opportunity to spend a lot of time in Paris and Australia, fly fishing in New Zealand. It was a really neat 4 years. And I came back, and Kurt had left his accounting firm, and I was wondering, what are we going to be doing here for my wind down? And we got together, started talking about our passion of helping businesses perpetuate and thrive. And I'd been a CEO of 8 different companies in my career, transitioning primarily. And Kurt came at it from a different perspective, heavy in the financial area, but also passionate about the governance and addressing the longevity issues. So we partnered up almost 12 years ago. And then about 6 years ago, after working with a number of family businesses, we said, hey, there's some patterns that we're seeing that are tripping up some of these businesses from accomplishing their long-term goals. So we put our heads together, and Kurt had already got a jump start on this. He'd been looking at the pattern since his family business had been sold. And we came up with these 7 critical issues, and we went over them any number of times to refine what are the key issues that if we address these, we got high predictability of perpetuating our business. So we took off on our writing adventure, and I can tell you, if 2 partners can survive writing a book together, it's a pretty solid relationship, and it is. We had fun doing it, and then it came time, we love to read and meet with colleagues and talk about business, and so we had a book reading group. And so we kind of went before our group, and we just finished reading Malcolm Gladwell's book, The Tipping Point. And the gang was talking, and they said, you know, what you guys are talking about are the tripping points. Voila, there we had it. So we thought, I wonder if Malcolm will mind. So we shot off an email to Malcolm Gladwell. Next day he responds, hey, Hal, no problem. He says, I don't want anything to do with tripping points. So, very gracious man. And so we hung that title on it. We're in our 3rd revision now of this book, and it's all about George Wilson. We found a composite. We named him George that pretty well describes what a lot of businesses go through. George was in his mid-60s. He had family in his business, and his health wasn't really great, but he had done absolutely, well, I may give the plot away, Kurt. He had done very little in preparing for the transition. And our good buddy Dave Diaz has made it possible that you're all going to leave here today with a copy of this book, whether you want it or not. But you'll get to catch up on how did George Wilson deal with his issues. Well, he had a hard time even realizing what those issues were. Well, Kurt and I have spent our careers figuring out what these issues are, and we're going to run you through some of the stumbling blocks or tripping points that really trip up a lot of businesses. And we've seen this movie so many times with our clients. It just rolls out like a well-told story. We see it again and again. So our mission is to help our clients see the issues and hopefully find ways of addressing them in a more effective way where they don't have to take what they get, they can get what they want. And that's the heart of planning. And executing on that plan is to get what you want. And the predictability of that happening is very high if you execute on your plan. I would ask you, how many of you read Jim Collins' book, Good to Great? Okay. In that book, Jim pointed to a very interesting, Mr. Collins, I should say. I don't know him that well at all. But Collins wrote about the style of leadership that got a company to great. And if you remember, it was talking about level 5. It was a very humble leader who was not the big flash personality, but really addressed the kinds of issues that would create a culture of performance and accomplishment, and he did it in a very humble way. Last year, Jim Collins came out with his next book, and it was 10 years later, where he adds a very potent thought to getting to great. And the title of that book, if you haven't read it yet, it's a worthwhile one. It's called Great by Choice. And the theme of how you get there is basically discipline, discipline, discipline. So it's great to be a humble leader. It's great to have wonderful followership and insights, but the discipline of staying the course is critical. So that's great by choice. So that's some of the thinking that we've plowed into how we help our clients address these 7 issues. It's interesting to read the book. Yeah, that was, we see all of that, but what are you going to do about it? And it's that execution side that we all struggle with. In fact, that's probably one of the biggest hurdles that we deal with in change. We all like our ruts, don't we? So getting what you want often means having to give up some of the things you do and change to something a little new and different. And in the leadership area, what leadership is really all about is creating a brighter future. Think about it. If we're trying to be an effective leader, we're trying to take our organization, our team, our family to a better place. That means change. And what George was doing in the story was not much. And we find this a lot in our businesses where business leaders often do get in a rut. They just keep doing the same old, and not getting the kind of results they want. So leaders are very effective at asking the questions, what do we need to do differently that will move us the direction we want to go? So leadership is number one, making sure that we are looking to keep getting better. Kurt and I felt so strong about this, we named our company, our firm, LeadershipOne, because that's where it starts. And we firmly, firmly believe that. So I spend a lot of time with CEOs and their leadership teams. The team is a powerful, powerful improvement over the entrepreneurial model. Entrepreneurs are great. They get us started the right direction and they will create a business, but it often needs a professional team to come along and take it to the next level. I followed a very strong entrepreneur in the business that I was recruited to run in England. Equifax had just bought a 30% interest in the business, and my job was the next 4 years is to get it up to a level where Equifax would complete the acquisition. Well, the entrepreneur had just done some incredible things, and I found out he didn't know what no meant. He just thought it was not now. And that's pretty typical of entrepreneurs, and that is crucial in startups. But once you get into the rhythm of a business, then the professional approach from the leadership in terms of creating predictability is critical. So leadership is number one. And Kurt related our belief how important relationships are. You've all heard of Stephen Covey. He wrote The 7 Habits of Highly Effective People. Well, his son wrote a book called The Speed of Trust. And trust is foundational to relationships. So having a high trust environment is crucial, and that's what leaders who are effective do. They establish high levels of trust that create strong relationships. Kurt and I use a description of relationships. It's like a conduit. So if Heather and I have a real strong relationship in our business workings, then we got this huge conduit. We can toss stuff through there, and it doesn't take long for us to get to a decision. But if Eric and I have a strained relationship, we've got this little pipette that we've got to force everything through in this relationship. So we characterize building relationships as increasing the size of that conduit that we can have a lot of transactions going through there quickly. You just think of it. I called Dave on the phone and said, hey, Dave, could you help me with this? Bam, it's done. Other people you call say, well, Hal, let me get back to you on that. And it's just interesting in the relationship building how we can create this conduit of effectiveness, another application of leadership. The ownership transfer, it's going to happen. How much can we affect it to be the result that will benefit the shareholders, the family, whomever will be the stakeholders in the whole operation. How do we plan for ultimate ownership transfer? What are some of the biggest problems you've encountered, Kurt, in the ownership transfer area?
In essence, what we're doing here is we're suggesting to business owners and to families is do your ownership transfer while you're alive. We want to put together a living plan, not a dying plan, right? We want to be proactive. We need our family members with us as we go through this transition. But with regards to ownership transfer, we're always talking about be proactive. Everybody needs to understand exactly how they're going to get in and exactly how they're going to get out, what the valuation formula is, and what the payment terms are. Okay, but ownership transfer will happen. The question is whether you're going to do it voluntarily under your terms or involuntarily following estate tax law or at the date of death.
Okay, Kurt, how many CEO owners have we encountered that thought they were going to live forever? Or at least they're acting that way. Just hardly any kind of effort in addressing the living plan.
And what's difficult about the ownership transfer piece is that, yes, we're talking to people that have spent their entire life building value, building their net worth, building businesses, and now we're asking them to give it all away or to transfer it to the next generation. And many times they're not ready. So we deal with the issue of, well, what are they going to do next? After they sell their business, what are they going to do next? And the bottom line is they need to aspire to do something else. There's no retirement here. It's all about what do I want to do with the rest of my life. So we're very strong proponents of doing ownership transfer while you're alive, while you're in control, so it ends up the way you want it to end up. And we need you to resolve family conflicts or business conflicts.
Another tripping point that we encounter is related to the lack of planning for succession, lack of planning for ownership transfer. It's just lack of planning. Entrepreneurs are absolutely noted and famous, renowned for being very project-oriented. I don't know if you've ever noticed. Entrepreneurs love project. Here's a project, there's a project, here's another project that solves problems, but they don't always move us toward the best outcomes. So what we do a lot of work with our clients doing is introducing them to a process of strategic planning and making sure that they have identified what are the values that drive this organization and what's our vision. If we can get our heads around that, then we've got pretty good direction. Then we can identify what initiatives will advance our business to achieve that vision. Well, that's very important, but there's some real interesting research that comes from our friends at Harvard Business School. It said 90% of businesses, and listen to this staggers us. 90% of businesses do a very poor job of executing their plans. And here's a typical scenario. We'll have a 2-day retreat. We'll come up with 5 really great goals, maybe 7 sometimes. And then we all say, there now, let's go back and go to work. A year later, we come back together, and maybe out of those 7 goals, 1 or 2 of them have been accomplished because there was no implementation system or discipline behind that. And it was hard for me to grasp that 90% of businesses fall into that category. Do you have any experiences similar to that where you've seen the retreat, the goals, and very little follow through? What we've found we have to do to help our clients really embed this is for 90 days, usually following the strategic plan, we put the action plan together that will implement the goals, and then we meet regularly to make sure progress is being made. In the action plan, you identify what the action should be, who's going to do it, and what's the due date. And that's how you drive performance. That's how goals are realized. That's how we progress towards achieving our vision. So it's a very disciplined process. We create clarity and focus about if we do these things, it's going to move us the direction we want to go towards achieving our vision. Is this pretty close to what you understand strategic planning really is about? Any experiences along this line to validate or challenge?
Sometimes in management teams, you have a high-powered number of people, their vision is myopic sometimes. And so I think the problem is how do you make, instead of a shotgun, how do you make a rifle thing on that vision? Because if they're all
Right.
looking at a different vision, you're going nowhere.
And Duff, we see that a lot. Different visions that really haven't been articulated in such a way that creates a unified direction. And once we have at the corporate level identified we're going that way, then we can unify a lot of activities within the business to make sure they're consistent, collaborative, and supportive of moving that direction. Without a refined strategic planning process, then we kind of get a lot of wasted maneuvering that isn't always in harmony or in sync. So yeah, we have found there's great value in the strategic planning and execution process, and it's one of those best practices that you got to keep working on and just keep getting better. We spend a lot of time on identifying what best practices are, and we bring those in to help us address these tripping points. So how do we overcome the opportunity to trip and replace it with the opportunity to excel? And there's a lot of great practice experience out there that we can grab hold of and say, hey, why is this important? What does it look like when you're doing it? And how do we put it to work? And that's how we help our clients avoid the big tripping points. Okay, management, succession, and performance. Well, you're going to see that in the book. And I do hope you have a chance to spend a little time with it and find out. George hadn't done his homework in management succession. Here he was thinking about possibly moving out of his business, and there was absolutely no one prepared to step up within the business. And identifying the kind of management system that perpetuates high performance is a big part of the succession process, and training people in how to create predictability in outcomes. Ultimately, that's the definition of management. You know you have management in place when there's predictability. Think about it. When you create a budget, if you rarely achieve your budget, there's a management issue in there somewhere. And I see the companies that have really done an effective job of creating budgets, regular budget review, or strategic planning and regular reviews of their action plans. There's high predictability that they're going to achieve their results. That's when you know management is in place. And as professional managers, we want to keep looking for, well, what else can we do to keep getting better? And we teach leadership teams, that's the mantra for a great future. Keep getting better. Don't stop. Just keep getting better. And that's the ultimate ingredient, I believe, in management, succession, and performance. Does that make sense? Okay, thank you. Financial performance. Well, guys, remember Peter Drucker? Yeah. What a wizard. Amazing. Father of management enlightenment. He made a huge contribution to management during his lifetime, 92 years. And he was still consulting at the end. My hero. Peter said the ultimate goal of a business is to be profitable. And it's amazing, Kurt, how many businesses are just teetering right there on barely being profitable, that we have the opportunity to help them refine their financial performance processes. And there's just so much at stake in making sure we have a solid financial footing in our businesses, using metrics, looking at leading indicators, the kinds of things that gives us some control over the future we are going to be experiencing. We are creating the future, and it's all based on our financial performance and making sure that we are doing all the necessary tweaks along the way to be a thriving, viable business, even when the Great Recession comes along. For the past 3 years, we've been dealing with a lot of our clients' issues and dealing with huge cutbacks that they've had to make. We've got clients that are now 1/3 the size they were 3.5 years ago. Some of them are really starting to flourish because what they did, they took this time and say, when the economy comes back, we're going to be poised. And we've gone through the tripping points. They've gone through the issues that would hold them back, and they've prepared their systems and their people to make even a greater contribution when the economy comes back. So it's been a time to not only catch their breath and adjust to revenue that had been greatly reduced, but to tweak their systems, train their people, and to come out of this process that they will be on the leading edge. And we just worked with a client in Sacramento. They just were awarded the new, they are, help me Kurt, they're precast concrete specialists. And they were just awarded the contract for precast for the 49ers Stadium. They would not have gotten that had they not, in the past 3 years, done all the things they've done to keep getting better. And they've gone through the tripping points, addressing those one by one. How do we come out of this a stronger business than we were before? And they're in line for another huge contract that's coming up. Okay, Kurt, help me out here.
Personal financial planning. Bottom line is, if you're going to perpetuate your business, you got to afford to be able to afford to do that, right? I mean, we got to be planning for that event because there is no quote-unquote liquidity event. I mean, we're not going to sell our business, we're going to pass the ownership, and yeah, we're going to get our money out over a period of time. What we're going to do is finance the transaction. But we got to be able to afford to do that. So we got to start very early and plan for that event. And then we need to have income continuity after we retire, if that's our passion and want to perpetuate our business. If we, quote unquote, are ambassadors of wealth and not consumers of wealth, we need to be planning for this event. And we don't do estate planning, we don't do personal financial planning. We work with other people and we bring them in to do that. So we outsource that service. But personal financial planning is very, very, very key. In essence, it'd be nice to be able to say you want to perpetuate your business, but you got to be able to afford to do that.
We find a lot of our clients have all of their eggs in their business basket. And you'll see that was where George Wilson is. And like many things in your lives, we kind of get caught up in the now, and we aren't thinking ahead about where should I be 3 to 5 years from now. And so that is a major impact we want to have with our clients, is to help them when they do get ready to do something else, they're prepared to do that. One of my favorite cartoons, it says, we're encouraging people to become involved in their own rescue. Believe you me, that is prevalent, that they're just taking care of each day at a time, not thinking ahead in terms of growing their business, making their business stronger. What else can we do to keep getting better? And think about it for a moment. If we're taking care, if we're good stewards of what we have, then this should be a major theme of what we're looking at. How can we make it better? How can we contribute more? And it's a powerful process of looking at what we can do to get better results, regardless of what it is, exercise, diet, business, family relationships. And it's interesting, there is a methodology. First of all, we do our diagnostics. Where are we? What's the situation? You've heard it called situation analysis, a lot of different things. But if you want to get better at something, you got to find out, where am I starting from? So we do an assessment, whether it's strategic planning, estate planning, the estate planners do it, or through business perpetuation. There is a methodology. We do the diagnostics, and then the values and the vision, where we want to go with that. And I could apply this to my exercise program or to my estate planning. Then what are the strategies that we're going to get there? It's interesting. Have you guys heard of the Balanced Scorecard? Okay, this is a program that came out of Harvard Business School with KPMG about 20 years ago. That they tracked successful companies and found out what they had in common were these 4 perspectives. They really focused on helping their people be the best they could be, training, reinforcement. Their systems were well documented and people were trained in their systems. That they focused on their customers and delighting them with their services. And financially, they hit their numbers and they drove performance using metrics. Well, that works in our succession planning, our strategic planning, and to some extent even in my personal fitness planning. Come up with a strategy, what my goals are, and then the action plan. What am I going to do about it? So avoiding the tripping points is you do have to be intentional. You need a plan, and you need to work the plan.
If we can, maybe I wanted to go back to a question that was raised a little bit. Camille asked me this question about vision. I would say the biggest conflict is all about vision. What are we going to build? And we spend a lot of time making that transition between values, in essence, what do we really want to perpetuate? Because ultimately the only thing we can perpetuate are our values. And vision from a standpoint of what do we want to build. So when we talk about vision, I'm sure you've seen vision statements before, 2 or 3 sentences, a kind of flowery type of thing. We try to make them 360. But we start talking about the key elements of the vision statement. When we start working with a business or a family, we need to be talking specifically about what are the benefits and obligations of ownership. What are the benefits and obligations of ownership? If we want to perpetuate our business, the benefits and obligations are quite different. The benefit is there will not be a liquidity event. Second item, governance. How are we going to make decisions? Are we going to have a board of directors? How are we going to make decisions at the board level? What decisions are going to be unanimous versus subject to supermajority? So we spend a lot of time basically redefining the rules of engagement and how are we all going to get along, okay? Third key element of vision planning, management succession. In essence, who's going to lead the business going forward? But we all need to get around number 4, which is growth metrics. Do we want to grow at a hyperinflation rate or a hyper growth rate, double digit? Or are we thinking about more controlled growth? Because if we got half of our shareholders thinking about double-digit growth and an exit strategy, and everybody else is thinking about perpetuation and a reasonable distribution or a dividend, we got major conflict, right? They're not on the same page. They shouldn't even be in business together. So we're asking ourselves, do we share a common vision? The 5th one in the vision area is diversification. What do we want to build? And if we're going to go away from our core set, if we're going to diversify, what else? What other businesses are we going to get into? So when we talk vision, we get very, very detailed and very specific. We talk about benefits of ownership. How are we going to make decisions in terms of governance? Who's going to make the decision in terms of the succession plan? And our growth metrics and diversification. So it's, and that vision belongs to the current generation of owners. Once you start passing to the next generation, so all of a sudden I'm here today to tell you get ahead of this game because the tax world's changing, but you got to get everybody on the same page with regards to your vision. If we don't come together on our vision, we shouldn't be in business together. And that's the test that we take people through. When we do the diagnostics, the question is this a business that can be perpetuated? Your business model needs to be flexible for a changing vision. Your business model needs to be flexible for a changing vision. Just the aging process changes our vision, right? We're in partners together. I got to tell you, sometimes I run out of gas before he does, okay? And we need to be able to have enough of an understanding, a buy-sell agreement in place that will enable us to exit when we're ready to, without incurring a major dispute or uncertainty on the business. So we're asking people to get engaged in this process, address the difficult issues while you're with us, if you have the passion to sustain your businesses. Because if we can improve some of those mortality figures, just think about the impact upon our communities. If we could double it, right? If we can increase the mortality from 30 to 60, just think of the jobs. Just think of the capital. Just think about the impact upon our community. Or think about the impact upon our community when we lose a significant business, right? That's what's so scary in terms of what's happening, in our state government too. And that's what's happening with these tax proposed changes. Okay, the middle class is being outvoted or outvoiced. Hopefully if nothing else you picked up today is that we are passionate about helping businesses perpetuate. And it's all about sustainability. It's all about giving back. It's all about making a difference. Over the years, we've started 2 not-for-profit organizations. One is in Sacramento. It's called the Capital Region Family Business Center. It's a 501c3. It's an organization where businesses come together and they share and discuss issues, stuff that is undiscussable at times. But they all come together and come together on a regular basis. The other thing that Dave was mentioning too is because these numbers are a little overwhelming, right? And businesses have enough internal issues that they have to address with regards to perpetuation. But what can we do collectively as family businesses to change the external factors? So we've started an advocacy group, lobbying on behalf of these family businesses in Sacramento and at the federal level. And our objective basically is to say, you know what, there's a community reason, there's a calling why we want you to perpetuate your businesses, and nothing else, to retain the jobs in the capital so it doesn't go offshore. So our goal is basically to be the voice of family businesses at the state capital level and also the federal level, and to make an intra-family sale a tax-free event. There is no liquidity event, right? Why in the heck is that a taxable event? And why do we have to ask you to gift it? Why can't you sell it to your kids? Right? And then why do we have to pay a capital gains tax on that? We want you to perpetuate. We don't want to add to the cost. So that's what we're doing at a capital level, in essence, trying to make sure that this is possible. Because the odds are against us. This is hard work. It's a lot easier to say, I'll take the value and the dollars and give my kids the money.
Okay, our wind down thought is a quote taken from one of our favorite books called Hope is Not a Method. It's amazing how many businesses live in hope rather than really solid planning. But Gordon Sullivan, a retired general, says, in an enduring organization, there's no finite end state, only a journey, always becoming, never being. So this process we're describing is not finite, it's ongoing. We continue to look at our responsibilities, our accountabilities, our stewardship responsibilities. How do we keep getting better? And that's ultimately what will drive us to get what we want rather than taking what we get.
Thank you.